Hey, I'm really sorry it has taken me so long to do another update here. We have been so busy trying to get this Z2 project going with the puppet show and the live thing and the comic book and everything that it's been a little neglected. Anyway, this is what I'm going to talk about today, is my gear that I used for Casualties of Cool. Now, essentially, I tend to write music based on a lot of different factors, but one of them is being inspired by gear and different types of gear. And when I first started writing Casualties, it was because I had come into contact with an old Telecaster Fender and an old Fender Champ. And that sort of sound, that really simple tweed sound, ended up being very inspiring to me. So as it always does, it evolves, and my gear world is still evolving. But with this record, I ended up using a bunch of different things, but primarily that Fender Strat. And I used that, I think it was a 1956 Fender Champ and a Fender Brown Face Princeton. But I also used the Axe Effects, and I used a bunch of plugins as well for guitar sounds. Like I think I used SansAmp and I used Revolver and a couple of things. And so now we've got a couple of Casualties shows that may end up happening, so I've been working trying to get a rig ready for it. And this was filmed maybe a year ago while I was in the middle of still recording it. And this rig here, there's elements of it that will still be in my live guitar rig, but it has changed. But here I'm using a Sadowski guitar. Now Sadowski is a smaller sort of custom guitar shop based out of New York, and I've been using a bunch of their instruments because if pressed, my favorite instrument shape for a guitar is going to be a Tele. I just find that appeals to me more than any other shape. And Sadowski not only make just brilliantly beautiful instruments, but they're also very careful with the type of wood selection and the radiuses of the fretboards and everything. And so Roger there made me this Telecaster, which is a replica of more of a no-caster style with a really thick neck, but it does have a 12-inch radius on the fretboard and DiMarzio pickups and a preamp if I need it. But as you can see, it's a really sort of traditional looking Tele style. A lot of the gear I just sort of borrow from either people or music stores or what have you to try and isolate what it is before I end up purchasing it. And I'm very fortunate in that I've got a wide range of people that have a wide range of gear that I can try out. And some of it's endorsement stuff. So for example here, I've got a Victoria Bassman. Victoria is sort of a Fender-ish style circuitry that they, I think, started with, and they make a lot of tweed type amps, which is my favorite kind of clean sound, is like a tweed. Now, the thing with this Bassman is I really love the sound of a Bassman, but in order for it to really sing, in order for it to really get those tubes being as touch sensitive as I like, I have to just crank it. And this type of music is so quiet that I found since this video that as gorgeous as that Victoria amp sounds when it's cranked up, when it's at the volume that I find acceptable for Casualties music, it doesn't utilize its features properly, and it just doesn't sound like there's enough of a clear high end for me. So since this time, I've tried a couple of things, and I've tried a bunch of smaller wattage amps and smaller speakers and just a lot less power overall. And I tried a Mesa Rectoverb, which has a great clean sound and a lot lower volume output, and so I can really dig into the tubes at a lower volume. But even at that, it had so many additional features that I don't have use for Casualties, that as good as it sounds, it seemed a little bit much for this. And I actually have been trying this Peavey Delta Blues 115, which I've been through a bunch of work with Peavey, with the Flying V and all these sorts of things, and to go from a Victoria to a Peavey, sometimes people would think that would be a down step, but it actually is just a great sounding amp. It's just a killer sounding amp. It's my favorite product that they've put out recently. But I'm still in the process, and ultimately what it's coming to, though, is I just need a great clean channel, and then the pedal board can ultimately add the grit or whatever, but then it comes down, it's like this rabbit's hole where there's so many options for distortions and overdrives, and I had this trailer trash pedal board made in tweed, and it was really nice, and it cost me too much money. But ultimately now I'm using a piece of plywood so I can really isolate what it is I want out of my pedals before I commit to this again, and whatever. But my gear is always in transit. I have stuff and then I get rid of stuff, but again, it really inspires the writing if I have cool stuff. Those speakers that I'm using here are by a small company in the UK called Matrix, and they're a full range type of speaker system. Full range meaning it reproduces all of the frequency range of like more of a stereo type sound reproduction, like a home stereo type sound reproduction, as opposed to a guitar amplifier, which is voiced, so the guitar's primary frequencies are accentuated in whichever way the circuitry allows. So those matrix wedges I use for the effects. I've got a small amount of delay going through the actual dry signal, but I have, in this scenario, my axe effects behind it, so it doesn't sort of get in the way of my hey, I'm using old stuff mojo vibe. But we all know that that's all a crock anyway, because I put so much reverb on everything. But the axe effects here does a really good job of getting these sorts of echoes. But recently I've been using a different thing for live, just to experiment before these shows. I've got this TC Electronics and this Strymon reverb that I'm borrowing, and that's a good effect too. Ultimately, I can get my sound from anything. I can get it from a Zoom pedal, I can get it from a plug-in. I know what I want, but I have to say that this gear thing is a real hobby for me, and I really enjoyed this. So anyway, next week I will be back talking about the strings and some other elements of the record, and we're getting close to the release. So thanks for your patience. I'm going to make sure that we get a bunch more of these updates done before this is over. Cheers, guys.